Hey everyone, and welcome to another video of the Python Fundamentals series. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how exactly you can use Python, in particular Python functions, to create a rock, paper, scissors game. If you want more videos like this one, please make sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss anything. Without further ado, let's get started. So, rock, paper, scissors, that's the game that we'll be writing today in Python. The goals of this program is firstly, we want to allow the user to input choices, whether it's rock, paper, or scissors, and we'll be comparing the user's input with the choice that the computer makes randomly. Based on the choices, we want to show the winner. If it's a tie, we'll also display that onto the screen. To write this program, we'll be using functions, we'll be using control flow, loops, and conditionals, and obviously input and output. And lastly, we'll be using, again, the randint function from the random module. For now, don't worry about what the random module does because we haven't talked about how modules work, and in particular, we haven't talked about the random module. We'll talk about that later in this course. For now, though, you need to know that in order to use something from a module, we need to import the module at the top of the file. And if I run the cell, you'll see a call to the random.randint function with the parameter 1 and 3 will give us a random integer between 1 and 3. So 1, 2, or 3 will be printed out onto the screen. And here we printed out 25 of the random integers. And so that's basically how this program will go. And so let's get started coding. All right, to get started writing our rock, paper, scissors game, let's head toward our favorite code editor, which in my case is Sublime Text 3. And right now I've made a new file called rockpaperscissors.py, and that is where I will be writing the program. Before we start writing it in code, however, let's first think about what we want to do. First thing we want to do is we want to ask for user input. And secondly, we want to generate, or I guess, generate computer choice. And lastly, we want to display who won. So that's basically the main parts of our program. Let's just leave those as comments up here to remind ourselves of what we need to do. So let's make a function for each of those. So let's make a function called get player choice. And this will do exactly what it says. It will get the choice from the user. So let's print out a prompt of enter rock, paper, or scissors. So that is going to be the choices that the user has, and it will just return the so let's make player choice is equal to input player. And after that, we want to return player choice. So that is how the get player choice function works. And second part of our program is going to generate computer choice. So let's make a function for that called get computer choice. And using the random module, which we need to actually import first, so we want to write import random. And now we have access to the randint function of the random module. We want to create 1, 2, or 3. So let's just do random randint 1, 3. That function call is going to give us 1, 2, or 3. And let's store it in the variable called num. And if num is equal to 1, we want to return rock. If num is equal to 2, we would return paper. And otherwise, we want to return scissors. So we create a random integer, 1, 2, or 3. And if that integer is 1, we return rock. If it's 2, we return paper. And else, we would return scissors. So that will give us a fairly random choice on the computer's part. The last thing we need to do is to display the output. And we actually, before that, we need to evaluate who won and display. So let's make a function called evaluate. And it actually needs to take a few parameters, the first of which is player choice. The second of which is computer choice. So it's going to compare those values and see who has won. There are many ways you can do this. I'm just going to do this with the easiest or the simplest way, which is to compare them. So let me copy some code here and explain what those does. If I indent this correctly, you'll see if the player entered rock and the computer entered rock as well, the player and the computer would tie. If the player entered rock and the computer entered paper, the player lost. And here, if player entered rock and computer entered scissors, the player would have won. And this is pretty much the same thing for all of those down here as well. We're essentially returning how the user has done. So has the user won, has the user lost, or has the user tied? And you'll see why that is in just a moment when we write the main function. And that is going to be basically the function that will tie everything together and actually allow the user to play. So the first thing we need to do is, let's call it player choice is equal to get player choice. And computer choice is equal to get computer choice. And because, remember down up in the get computer choice function, we actually aren't printing out anything. So we need to actually first tell what the computer has chosen to the user. So we want to print out computer choice. So it will tell the user what the computer has chosen. And after that, we want to print out u and evaluate player choice and computer choice. So if the evaluate function returns 1, it will say you won to the user. And if the evaluate function chose to return lost, then we would print out you lost. That's basically how this statement works. So let's see what else we can do here. I think that's pretty good to start with. So let me run this program. And yeah, of course, I forgot to run the main function. We actually need to call the function because we just defined it here. So I'm going to run it again. Enter rock, paper, or scissors. I'm going to enter rock. And the computer entered scissors, and I won because rock wins against scissors. So right now we allow the user to play once before the program terminates. Let's see how we can make it so that the computer allows the user to play multiple times. So let's make a while loop. While true, we would run the main function. Actually, why don't we make a variable called playing, which is assigned the value of true. And while playing, we would run the main function. And if we want to exit the program, all we need to do is to make playing false, and the loop will exit and the program will end. So let's see, if we come up here, and why don't we tell the user to enter Q to quit, since that makes the most sense. So we would return Q if the user entered Q, get player choice. So if player choice is equal to Q, we would set playing to false. Think about if we just write playing equals false, would that actually modify this playing, or would that make a new local variable called playing with the value of false? And I kind of just gave myself away there. So we actually need to write global playing. So that will give this function access to the playing variable in the global scale. So this is going to be modifying this playing, which will also modify this one. Okay. So let's see if actually after modifying playing, why don't we type an empty return statement that will just exit the main function and those code won't be run. So let's try this out. I'm gonna enter rock and the computer entered scissors and I won. And if I type paper, the computer typed paper as well, we tied. If I try Q, it says finished in 11 seconds. That's basically the end of the program. So actually, why don't we make it so that there's a new line character here? But otherwise, I think this is pretty good for a program. I don't think there's anything else we need to do. So let's recap what we've done. Firstly, we have imported the random module so we can use the randint function. And here we made a function called getPlayerChoice, and it gives the user a prompt and returns the player's input. After that, we have a function called getComputerChoice. It creates a variable called num, which is a value between 1, 2, or 3. If that number is 1, we return rock, otherwise we return paper or scissors depending on the number. And here in the evaluate function, it takes two parameters, player choice and computer choice. And we would compare the player's choice and the computer's choice and decide on who has won. So if the player choice is rock, and we would see what the computer has entered and return tied, lost, or won depending on the computer's choice. And the same thing for when the player entered paper, and here would be just be scissors. And here we have the main function, which would ask the user for choice, and if the user entered Q, we would terminate the program. Otherwise, we would continue on here and ask the computer for a choice and print out who has won. And using a while loop, we allow the game to last infinitely until the user entered Q. And just for fun, let's play this one more time. So I'm gonna enter rock, and the computer entered paper, I lost. Why don't we try scissors? And the computer has entered paper and I won. And if I type Q, we finish the program. So hopefully this tutorial gave you an idea on how to use functions when writing program, especially on how we can use parameters to pass things into the function and how we can use them inside, as well as how we can use the return keyword in various different ways. And yeah. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this one. In the next video, we're going to get started with Chapter 4 of the Python Fundamentals course, where you'll learn about advanced data types that will allow us to store and access data more conveniently. With that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you then.